Hey there, Kyle Souza. Want to talk about a book today. Quick word before I get into the book, though. Check out thetalkgeek.com. Thanks. Alright, so this book is By the Sword. It is volume 1 of Magic of the Plains, right? Yes, Magic of the Plains by Greg, and I want to try to pronounce this right, Costikyan. Not sure I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not. It's actually labeled Volume 1. There is no Volume 2. It's the only volume. So a little bit of a misnomer there. It's put up by Tor Books, which is a big fantasy sci-fi book distributor, book publisher. Let me read you the back cover just so you kind of get a picture of what the story's about before I talk about my feelings about the book. Leaving tribe and family behind... Oh wait, I should probably read the first sentence. Ride with Nijon, a young barbarian on his manhood quest. Leaving tribe and family behind, he fights and slays a lion barehanded. While recovering from his wounds, he meets his true father, the god Mongoose, who introduces him to his brother and to the prophecies of his greatness. Treachery, magic, banishment, and sorcerous battles await Nijon. Be there when he rides to fight the dragon and win the princess' hand. Many surprises await Nijon. Don't miss a single one. Alright, so that's a little synopsis of what this story is about. First, though, the writer, Greg Costikyan. I'm just going to call him Greg because I'm sure I'm butchering that last name. He designed Star Wars the role-playing game. If you're not familiar with role-playing games, they're basically dice games where you sit around and talk around a table, and that's how you play. You pretend to be other people. Well, Dungeons & Dragons is the biggest example of that, but there's lots of other ones. There's a Doctor Who one. There's Star Trek ones. There's ones for basically every genre out there. There's a Shadow one run, so there's very specific franchise ones. Well, there's a Star Wars one. That was designed in the 80s, and it was designed by this guy, Greg. So thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. But that's not what this book is about. So this book is about a barbarian. When you think of barbarian, some people think of like Conan the Barbarian, and that's a pretty apt example for this type of barbarian. Kind of smarter than your average barbarian is usually portrayed in modern times. This guy, Nijon, Nijon, hope I'm pronouncing that right, is a pretty chill dude. He's relaxed as far as, he does a lot of exciting things, but he's not very arrogant. He belongs to the Plains people, and as part of a rite of passage, he has to go out into the wilderness for 40 days. He does. While he's there, he does slay a lioness. He gets betrayed by somebody that he knows back from his clan. When he does meet his father, Mongoose, who's a god, which his mother had told him and everybody else about, but nobody really believed that he was, a Zeus situation going on or Hercules situation going on there. Not that he was the biggest, most powerful dude, this Nijon guy, but he was a half deity, or half of a lesser god, as Mongoose is described in the pantheon of this world. And so he gets back home, and he gets cast out of his tribe because he's been betrayed by this guy. He's basically been framed for a murder while he was gone. While he was gone, though, he met some colorful characters. One of them in particular comes up again later. I'm not trying to give away too much. You pretty much see where this stuff is going straight from, right from the start. That first quarter of the book is, or even less than a quarter of the book. Like, how many pages is this story? 253 pages of story. So close to 252, which is my favorite number. But 253 pages by about maybe 60 pages in, you've got all the info that I've just given you, or could guess at it at least. But then, he has to travel. He travels to a town, which is what Mongoose tells him to do. Go travel to a town north of where they are, and then he decides to take on a dragon because it's dragon season. They talk about dragon season, so he goes to take on a dragon to rescue a princess. But you get really far into the book before he gets to that part. Like, I'm not sure exactly how far it was in, but I was surprised since that's kind of the point of the book. You know, he gets told early on, hey, you're going to travel north, you're going to do great things, you're going to lead your people, it's going to be amazing. And it takes a long time till you get to like that climax. Now, and which I think is pretty good. Actually, it's really good storytelling. The way that everything's laid up, because it's not slow. It's no slow pacing. Everything that's done is important. It's laying a lot of groundwork. But it just goes to show that, hey, the big part of the story, like we always remember like the climax of a movie, right? But that's always a real small part in time. And you can't always think of that when you're watching a movie, especially modern action movies, where they're just moving from plot point to plot point to plot point. There's so much action in between, and you don't really think of any one part as necessarily even being the climax because they're all these big spectacular pieces. But with this, there's a definite climax to the book. And when you're reading through a book, you get to see how far into the book that is and how far it lasts and how little there is in the story after that climax. Like, you know, we always talk about, oh, and then they ran off to the sunset and that's the end of the story. That's not the end of their story, but that's the end of the book type thing. You get something similar here. He does something amazing, and then there's a little bit of story afterwards, just kind of wrapping up some loose ends, and it's the end of the book. I'm not going to tell you exactly how everything ends or all the details because I think you should go read it yourself. I'll include a link in this video on YouTube to do so. But it's a good book. It's well worth the read. I picked this book up at a used bookstore, so I didn't spend too much on it personally, but it was $5, $5.99 Canadian, when it came out brand new. And I'd say it's definitely worth it. It's a pretty cool story. And I think Greg is definitely a fan of the franchise, or a fan of the genre when it comes to fantasy, and this book does have some tongue-in-cheek parts to it where there's a little bit of on-the-nose stuff where I think he's kind of poking fun at things that are tropes in the high fantasy realm that we normally get. Especially kind of turning prophecies on their head. I think that's a big one because a lot of these hero's journey type storybooks start out with a prophecy or some magical person saying that something's going to happen, and then that thing happens. Well, in this one, it happens, but in a pretty unexpected way, and even the main character realizes that and is like, oh, see what you did there. Pretty interesting. So it's a fun read. I'd say check out By the Sword, which is Volume 1 of Magic of the Plains. Volume 1 and only. Magic of the Plains, By the Sword, by Greg Costikyan.